Good morning, guys. Hello. My name is Mark Daryl L. Oronan from BSc Math 1A, and today I will be one of the reporter, or I will be the one who will report the topics regarding on neo-behaviorism under Tolman and Bandura. All right. When we say neo-behaviorism, from the word itself, neo or new. And then when we say behaviorism, it is a theory that human and animal behavior can be explained in terms of conditioning without appeal to thoughts and feelings. This is under the theory of Tolman and Bandura. Alright, we will go to the next slide. Neo-behaviorism is one of the branches of psychology which was based primarily on logical positivism, which supported the development of comprehensive theories and frameworks which could be applied to behaviors observed. There are two theories reflecting on neo-behaviorism that stand out, which is under Edward Tolman's purposive behaviorism and Albert Bandura's social learning theory. Alright, when we say logical positivism, it is a form of positivism developed by members of the Vienna Circle. And when we say Vienna Circle, it is considered that the only meaningful philosophical problems are those which can solve by logical analysis, which is very true. Alright, Tolman's purposive behaviorism. Purposive behaviorism has also been referred to as sign learning theory and is often seen as the link between behaviorism and cognitive theory. Tolman believed that learning is a cognitive process. Learning involves forming belief and obtaining knowledge through purposeful and goal-directed behavior. All right. According to Tolman, believe that learning is a cognitive process. When we say cognitive, this is relating to being or involving conscious intellectual activity. Or when we say intellectual activity, this is something like how we think or how we reason, or in short, this is under the thinking or reasoning skills of an individual. All right. Tolman stated in his sign theory that an organism learns by pursuing sign to a goal. So let's see what Tolman stated in his theory. Alright. He stressed the organized aspect of learning. The stimuli which are allowed in are not connected by just simple one-to-one switches to the outgoing responses. Rather, the incoming impulses are usually worked over and elaborated in the central control room into a tentative cognitive-like map of the environment, and it's the tentative map indicating routes and paths and environment relationship which finally determine what response, if any, the animal will make. Tolman's form of behaviorism stressed the relationship between stimuli rather than stimulus response. Tolman said that a new stimulus, the sign, becomes associated with already meaningful stimuli, the significance. Through a series of pairings, there was no need for reinforcement in order to establish learning. Alright, ito kasi ni, pag sinabi kasi natin stimuli, it is a thing or event that evokes a specific functional reaction in an organ or tissue. And then this is something like what we call pampasigla. Okay? And then when we say stimulus or response or stimulate, this is a raised level of physiological system. Okay? So that's it. Mhm. Tolman. Tolman's key concept, learning is always purposive, goal directed. Tolman asserted that learning is always purposive and goal-directed. He held notion that an organism act or responded for some adaptive purpose. He believed individuals do more than merely respond to stimuli. They act on belief, attitude, changing condition, and they strive towards goals, which is something like purposive behaviorism for Tolman. This is something like behavior is a goal oriented, which is very true because we also experience it and we also see it. Through experience, we gain expectation about how to use paths and tools to achieve goals, which we can see on the next page. All right. Cognitive maps in rats. In his most famous experiment, one group of rats was placed at random starting location in a maze, but the food was always in same location. Another group of rats had the food placed in different location, which always required exactly the same pattern of turns from their starting location. The group that had the food in the same location performed much better than the other group, supposedly demonstrating that they had learned the location rather than a specific sequence of turns. This is tendency to learn location signify that rats somehow form cognitive maps that helps them perform well on the maze. He also found out that organisms will select the shortest or easiest paths to achieve a goal. Applied in human learning. Since a student passes by the same route going to school every day, he acquires a cognitive map of the location of his school. So when transportation is done, he can still figure out what turns to make to get to school the shortest or easiest way. Alright guys, when we learn the map or a specific map, this is we will also acquired or learn the cognitive strategy or what we call the cognitive map in order for us to achieve the goal at a very shortest or easiest way. In this sentence or in Tolman's idea, we expect specific outcomes to follow specific behaviors. If unrewarded, we seek other ways to accomplish our goals, which is proved by the rats on the previous slide. And we can see that the rats seek other ways to accomplish their goals or to get where the food is. Okay, so now we will go to the next slide. All right, just to summarize, what we already discussed. Tolman's viewpoint: we do not have to be reinforced in order to learn. We must be motivated, and motivation produces internal tension, creating a demand for the goal. Motivation determines what features of the environment will be noticed. And also, behavior is not fixed, automatic, or stereotype, but it's flexible, which is very true. Okay? And then Tolmans also demonstrate the existence of spatial expectation, or what we call the T-maze. T-maze is a wherein rats start at different location but reward always in same end of maze. Rat must turn different direction, or what we call the alternate path maze. Rat choose their shortest path after learning. When black, take next shortest path. Okay, and that is just to summarize, and that is what the previous um, slide all about. Okay, okay, we will go to the next slide. Okay, latent learning is a kind of learning that remains or stays with the individual until needed. It is learning that is not outwardly manifested at once according to Tolman. It can exist without reinforcement. He demonstrated this in his rat experiment, wherein rats apparently learned the maze by forming cognitive maps of the maze, but manifested this knowledge of the maze only when they needed to. Okay? Uh, alright. Applied in human learning. A 2-year-old always sees her dad operate the TV, remote control, and observe how the TV is turned on or how channels is changed and volume adjusted. After some time, the parents are surprised that on the first time that their daughter holds the remote control, she already knows which button to press for what function. Through latent learning, the child knew the skills beforehand, even though she has never done them before. Alright, when we say latent learning studies, it is something like investigate or investigating whether reward is necessary for learning to occur. Three alright, hold on. Three conditions are always get rewarded at goal. And our rats show rapid decrease in errors when rewarded. Motivation is needed for performance. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Okay. We have to go to the next slide. The concept of interviewing evening the variables are variables that are not readily seen as determinants of behavior. Tolman believed that learning is mediated or influenced by expectation, perception, representation, needs, and other internal or environmental variables. For example, in his experiment with rats, he found out that hunger was an inter-evening variable. Alright, in this concept of inter-evening variable, we can see that difficulty replicating results. We can see that motivation restrict attention to relevant cues, irrelevant rewards are ignored, which is very true. No latent learning, or we can see that no latent learning occurs when strong but irrelevant rewards are provided, even if they are relevant later. For example, as you can see the what a hungry rats maze, okay? We can see that water in hungry rats maze. That is the best example for that. All right, we have to go to the next slide. Reinforcement not essential for learning. Tolman conclude that reinforcement is not essential for learning, although it provides an incentive for performance. In his studies, he observed that a rat was able to acquire knowledge of the way through a maze, to develop a cognitive map, even in the absence of reinforcement. Alright, we now go to the Albert Bandura social learning theory. Alright, we will tackle or discuss about the Albert Bandura social learning theory in this slide. Alright, social learning theory focuses on the learning that occurs within a social context. It's considered that people learn from one another, including such concepts as observational learning, imitation, and modeling. Among others, Albert Bandura is considered the leading proponent of this theory. Alright, if one of the one of the famous quote of Albert Bandura is most learning is gained by people perception and thinking about what they experience. They learn by copying the example of others around them, which is very true. And I think that is one of the reasons why in others Albert Bandura is considered the leading proponent of this theory because most of his theory is um, we can see or we experience even in our society nowadays. All right. But first of all, before we go to the next slide, what is social learning theory? In addition, social learning theory for me it emphasizes on the importance and of observing and modeling the behaviors attitudes, and emotional reaction of others. Social learning theory focuses on the learning that occurs within a social context. Okay? This is something like how someone reacts to something depending on their immediate social or physical environment. Social context can influence how someone perceives something. Okay, so now we go to the next slide. All right, general principle of social learning theory. First is people can learn by observing the behavior of others and the outcomes of those behaviors. All right, as you can see here, the which is very true that people can learn by observing. Okay, that is the keyword on that. The second one is learning can occur without a change in behavior. Behaviorist says that learning has to be represented by a permanent change in behavior. In contrast, social learning theories say that because people can learn through observation alone, their learning may not result in a behavior change. Okay? um, Cognition right what the keywords here in the second is people or learning occurs without change in behavior. That is the keyword. All right. Cognition plays a role in learning. Over the last 30 years, social learning theory has become increasingly cognitive in its interpretation of human learning. Awareness and expectation of future reinforcement or punishment can have a major effect on the behavior that people exhibit. Alright? The keywords here is the cognition plays a certain role in learning. Okay? That is the keyword. Alright, in the fourth one, social learning theory can be considered a bridge or a transition between behaviorist learning theories and cognitive learning theories. Alright, the social learning theory is a type of bridge or transition between behaviorist learning theories and cognitive theories. Okay, so that's it. Um, how the environment reinforce and punishes modeling. People are often reinforced for modeling the behavior of others. Bandura suggested that the environment also reinforces modeling. This is several possible ways. The observer is reinforced by the model. For example, a student who changed dress to fit in with a certain group of students has a strong likelihood of being accepted and thus reinforced by the group. Okay, which is the observer is reinforced by the model. Okay, all right. On the next slide, the observer is reinforced by a third person, which is okay. The observer might be modeling the action of someone else, for example, an outstanding class leader or student. The teacher notices this and compliments and praises the observer for modeling such behavior, thus reinforcing that behavior. Alright, the behavior is reinforced by a third person. Okay, the imitation behavior itself leads to reinforcing consequence. Many behaviors that we learn from others produce satisfying or reinforcing results. For example, a student in my multimedia class could observe how extra work a classmate. This is one. This student in turn would do the same extra work and also experience enjoyment. Okay? Alright, on the next slide. Alright, just to summarize, on the fourth one, it is something like consequences of the model's behavior affect observers vicariously. Alright, when we say vicariously, this is something like in a way that is experienced in the imagination through the actions of another person. For example, she was living vicariously through her children. Okay, that is one of the best example of vicariously. Okay, all right. In a contemporary social learning perspective and reinforcement and punishment, contemporary theory proposes that both reinforcement and punishment have indirect effect on learning. They are not the sole or main cause. Reinforcement and punishment influence the extent to which an individual exhibits a behavior that has been learned. Or in short, reinforcement, it is stimuli that can strengthen or weaken specific behaviors. We have here a positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement occurs when a token or reward is given to strengthen a desired behavior, and the other one is the negative reinforcement. One of the best example of negative reinforcement enforcement is or this is also strengthen behavior, but it does so by removing something that is unwanted, and that is a negative reinforcement. Okay, the expectation of reinforcement influence cognitive process that promote learning. Therefore, attention plays a critical role in learning, and attention is influenced by the expectation of reinforcement. An example would be when the teacher tells a group of students when what they will study next is not on the test. Students will not pay attention because they do not expect to know the information for a test. Okay. Cognitive factors in social learning. Social learning theory has cognitive factors as well as behaviorist factors, actually operant factors. Learning without performance. Bandura makes a distinction between learning through observation and the actual imitation of what has been learned. This is similar to Tolman's latent learning. Cognitive process during learning. Social learning theories contend that attention is a critical factor in learning. Alright, in cognitive factors in social learning. Alright, this is learning without performance, cognitive processing during learning, expectation, reciprocal causation, modeling, and that is cognitive factors in social learning. Alright, in expectation, as a result of being reinforced, people form expectation about the consequence that future behavior are likely to bring. They expect certain behavior to bring reinforcement and others to bring punishment. The learner needs to be aware, however, of the response reinforcement and response punishment reinforce increase a response only when the learner is aware of what connection. On the fourth one, a reciprocal causation. Bandura proposed that behavior can influence both the environment and the person. In fact, each of these three variables, the person, the behavior, and the environment, can have influence on each other, which is very true. The last one is modeling. There are different types of models. There is the live model, an actual person demonstrating the behavior. There can also be a symbolic model, which can be a person or action portrayed in some other medium, such as television, videotape, computer program. Alright. Okay. Behavior that can be learned through modeling. Alright, on the next slide, this is where condition necessary for effective modeling to occur. Bandura mentioned four conditions that are necessary before an individual can successfully model the behavior of someone else. First is the attention. The person must first pay attention to the model, or in addition, the learner should focus and pay attention on the model. Okay. On the next one is the observer, or in retention. The observer must be able to remember the behavior that has been observed. One way of increasing this is using the technique of rehearsal. Alright, in effect of modeling on behavior, modeling teaches new behaviors. Modeling influences the frequency of previously learned behaviors. And the third one is modeling influence the frequency of previous forbidden behavior. Okay, so to the next slide. Modeling increase the frequency of similar behavior. For example, a student might see a friend excel in basketball and he tries to excel in football because he is not tall enough for basketball. That is one of the best example of modeling increase the frequency of similar behaviors. Okay, we will now go to the last slide of the last topic uh, uh, of this topic. Education implication of social learning theory. Social learning theory has numerous implications for classroom use. Number one is students often learn a great deal simply by observing other people. All right. And the second one is describing the consequence of behavior can effectively increase appropriate behaviors and decrease inappropriate ones. Okay, this can involve discussing with learners about the reward and consequence of behaviors, of various behaviors, I mean. Alright, and the third one is modeling provides an alternative to shaping for teaching new behaviors. Instead of using shaping, which is operant conditioning, modeling can provide a faster, more efficient means for teaching new behavior. To promote effective modeling, a teacher must make sure that the four essential conditions exist. That four is attention, retention, motor, reproduction, and motivation. Okay, on the fourth one, teachers and parents must model appropriate behaviors and take care that they do not model inappropriate behaviors. And for the last one, teachers should expose students to a variety of other models. This technique is especially important to break down the traditional stereotype. Okay, and that's all for today. And again, this is, I hope that you learn from my report regarding the neo-behaviorism under Tolman's and Bandura. Again, this is Daryl from PSC Math 1A. Bye for now. Thank you.